Story 1. Infinity is the most terrifying thing imaginable. Imagine living for 1,000,000 years, unable to die, and knowing that it is only just the beginning. Story 2. Yes, but that was 30 years ago. I am not an old man with hair loss and anger management problems. Story 3. No, unless my loved ones gain immortality as well. Watching everyone I love die would never be worth it. Story 4. Yes, it leads to endless insight and limitless possibilities. Story 5. No, this life already sucks. I do not want another 10 billion years of it. Story 6. Only with conditions. I have to be able to die if I want to. Otherwise, it would just be me floating in eternal nothingness eventually. I would have to be able to heal from any injury or be otherwise impervious to harm. Accidents happen, and eventually, I will do something unwise or have something unwise happen to me. If those conditions are met, sure. Then it is more like eternal life on my terms. 80-some years is not enough time to do all I want. Story 7. I wouldn't want to. I imagine it would be an extremely lonely experience, or I would end up in the basement of some laboratory being experimented on. Story 8. Probably not. For now, it sounds great to be immortal, but I guess in several hundred years you will be very tired. Also, what if when the sun dies humanity has not found a way to achieve interstellar travel? Or even worse, humans have become extinct before that, and you are alone on Earth waiting to be swallowed by the sun. After everything is destroyed, you are floating in the vacuum of space, dark and cold, forever. Story 9. If I were able to give up that ability at any time, sure. Why not have the ability to do whatever you want until it becomes boring? Story 10. If my loved ones had the option to end it at any time, then yes. Story 11. No way. The only reason life is worth living at the moment is because of the people I have right now. Story 12. As long as I do not keep aging and can choose a time to opt out and end it, sure. Story 13. Maybe I could live forever in good health, heck yes. If I am going to feel as old as I get every year, no thanks. Story 14. Sure. It is the only way I will ever get into space travel. Story 15. No. I do not think I could handle endlessly watching everyone I love die while I keep living. Story 16. Yes. However, there are many factors that would impact that. Live forever in a perfect, ageless body with wealth to support myself. Sign me up. Live forever in a broken body without any money? No. Story 17. Not unless I had the control to end it. Imagine existing for billions and trillions of years after the sun has exploded and Earth is no more. Just floating in the vastness of space, unable to breathe, freezing, but also unable to die. How many hundreds of years would it take for you to go insane with the prospect of eternity before you? No thanks. Story 18. It is tempting, but if that means outliving my family, then no. Story 19. No, I would rather adhere to nature's intention with this one. Story 20. Only if it comes with an escape hatch. There are countless situations that would make for a very painful existence. The last thing I want is to be stuck in a black hole or trapped in space for the rest of eternity. Story 21. If I can choose to die and either stop aging or choose my age, yes. If I cannot, no. Story 22. I think it depends on the fine print. Do I age? Can I choose to end my life? What happens to an infinitely old brain? Floating in space or inside the sun after it becomes a red giant for eternity because I am indestructible sounds like a nightmare. What happens if my brain storage completely fills up? There are science fiction stories that speculate about how 1,000-year-old immortal humans would be trapped in a permanent dream state because they can no longer distinguish current events from previous memories. Story 23. I would say yes and become a person who is a role model like Alexander, Terex, Titanoboa, and Mammoth. I want to leave a lasting legacy, so that these things can be seen again, as if some supernatural energies remain with us forever. Story 24. No. I am pretty sure I would get sick of life after a few centuries or so. I am already tired of the patterns I have seen repeat over the years and disillusioned with human nature. Story 25. No. Instead of living forever, I would rather live a normal-length life but in my 25-year-old body. That seems much better. Story 26. I know and understand what life is. I know nothing about what happens on the other side, and I am not eager to find out. Story 27. Yes, as I am becoming older, I understand that time flies fast. Story 28. I am already very cynical about living people, and I am in my 30s. If I have to live until the year 3000, I might actually become a mass murderer. Story 29. Yes, it does not mention invulnerability. It also refers to shared immortality. Story 30. I am already annoyed that I have been alive this long. Also, actual genuine immortality is the worst thing imaginable. I have no idea why so many people try to present it as a good thing. Story 31. I have a lot of additional questions. Do I continue aging as I get older? Or will my physical age stop at some point? Will it remain at my current age or change? Am I immortal? Or am I still vulnerable to physical damage, hunger, thirst, or diseases? Can I reverse the effect or end my life if I am immortal? Can I share my eternal life with others, either by allowing someone else to live forever or by allowing scientists to study my organism? If I do not receive answers before making my decision, I will refuse immortality. Story 32. I am struggling with thoughts of self-harm every day, and I am not even 30 years old. What am I going to do with an infinite life? Story 33. No. There are likely dimensions of reality that we are completely unaware of. For all we know, we are immortal but experience our memory being erased as we switch realities. Being stuck in one reality forever, burdened with the weight of so much memory, is as horrifying a thought as I am capable of imagining. Story 34. Does living forever also mean my body is invincible? Or can I be torn into pieces and still be alive? Story 35. If 1, I do not age. 2, I cannot be disfigured or trapped. And 3, I can choose when I wish to die. Then yes. Otherwise, no. Story 36. I would say yes on one condition. I have to decide when it is enough and then my life would end. Living much longer than everyone else would be fun, I think, but I do want it to end. Story 37. While it included youth, I would not want to live long if my body was constantly deteriorating. Story 38. I would say yes if I were also ageless and indestructible and could choose to die if I wanted. Living forever and not being able to die would be terrible. It would be a gamble on humans eventually figuring out space travel. If that never became possible, you would just be stuck on Earth forever. Story 39. Am I just immortal or invulnerable too? Just because I do not age does not mean I cannot have my head chopped off. Story 40. Forced to live forever, as in I cannot die even if I wished it, or get to live forever, as in I can live as long as I want. For the first, no, that is hell. For the second, yes, sure, who cares? Story 41. No way. Yes, I want to know when we will find aliens, flying cars, and all that stuff. But you can never have good relationships, either friendly or romantic, because you don't age. All your friends will die over time. I think you would get depressed pretty soon, maybe around 150 years old, after you have done literally everything a person can do. Story 42. Well, of course. Why would someone choose to die if they do not have to? Story 43. Presuming I cannot die no matter what, and I will just infinitely regenerate. No. In fact, if you offered me immortality or immediately shot me in the head, I would choose the latter. Immortality sounds fun until you realize that you will outlive everyone and could be tortured for literal eons. What happens if the planet turns into a pile of ash? I would just float around the vast emptiness of the universe. Or when the universe ultimately dies, will you just float endlessly upon nothingness? Story 44. Only if there is a switch that ends my life when I want. Being free from medical anxiety sounds like a dream, and all the history I could witness would be amazing. But when it is time to go, it is time to go. Story 45. I do not fear death. I had been dead for billions and billions of years before I was born and had not suffered the slightest inconvenience from it. Mark Twain. Story 46. Absolutely not. My favorite things are to take naps and do nothing, It sounds like death will actually be heaven. I do enjoy my life, but it does get exhausting. I am in my 30s with teenagers. Being dead with no responsibility sounds great. Story 47, it depends on the conditions, but yes, sure. As long as I am not stuck when I finally want to go. Story 48. As long as I am also immune from prosecution or permanent injury, maybe. I do not want to be half a brain in a jar with magically persistent action potentials. Story 49. I would like to live an elf life. A long life but capable of death. Story 50. Depends. Do I have an exit option? I'd better be able to end it when I want to so that I don't have to outlive black holes and literally everything else in the universe. Story 51. If it is the type that makes me live beyond the end of the universe, no thank you. I want the kind where I can live forever, but can still die if I decide one day that I have had enough. When I truly want to die, I start to finally age and go like everyone else. Story 52. Yes, because I just want to know what happens with everything forever. Story 53. I would probably say no. Living forever sounds cool in theory, but watching everyone you care about come and go would be really tough. Life has its ups and downs, and knowing it will not last forever makes those good moments more special. Story 54. Immortality is not all it is cracked up to be. Even if you ignore the whole question about physical disabilities, getting trapped in unreachable places, and the heat death of the universe, eventually you are just going to get sick of yourself. The things you think of and what you enjoy doing are driven by how you were raised and what you are exposed to. History itself rhymes, and so do you on a much shorter timescale. How many days spent thinking about the same things in the same way with the same conclusions and the same results do you think you can stand before it wears a rut in your soul? Even if you commit yourself to trying something new every decade, pretend to be a new person, live in a new culture, how you react to those things will be framed by who you are and what you have experienced. Think of how much less interesting the world around you feels now as compared to when you were 10, and multiply that by forever. You are never going to fundamentally change. Grow, learn, yes, but not change because you have the same fundamental experiences driving your psyche. In order to avoid that, you would have to completely wipe who you are, all of your memories, and then have someone raise you from functional infancy. That would be strange because you would still be an adult. And then you would not have the benefit of comparing your new frame of mind to your old one anyway. So basically, what I am saying is reincarnation is the closest you are going to get to immortality without going insane. Story 55. Would my health issues go away? Is it like a Twilight vampire situation where all my wounds and imperfections heal themselves and I am in my prime? Then yes, absolutely. Story 56. Absolutely not. An extra 30 years, sure, but immortality is horrifying when you actually think about it. Story 57. Anyone saying yes has no idea how long forever is and what awaits them along the way. From the sun swallowing the earth to all stars dying off and floating around in empty dark space, to the evaporation of the last black hole and beyond. No, you do not want to live forever. If you could, however, choose when you want to die like a self-destruct button, that is another question entirely. I would probably pick that. Story 58. No, time, especially limited time, is what makes life valuable. Without it, I would give in to materialism and constant self-pursuits. Even if I eventually got over my loved ones dying, I wouldn't value the people around me. Just a life of fun? Fun without substance is boring. I believe this is a well-known fact. I also feel that the immortal aspects of life, such as knowledge and creativity, would lose their electricity if we were immortal. Story 59. Yes. Time equals money, so this would effectively make me the richest person in the world. I can do what I like. Story 60. Yes. I think human life is one of the most valuable things there is. Story 61. Yes, probably. I am sure future me would regret it after some millennia, but that is his problem. Story 62. No. It has been 18 years of misery for me. Why would I suffer through more? I really want this life to end. Story 63. I think I might, as long as my body also stops deteriorating. Witnessing interesting events is really fulfilling to me. Story 64. Yes, as long as I can actually end my life, but first I want to see how wealthy I can become, considering I can live for as long as I want. Story 65. I would say no because wherever my wife went when she died, I intend to join her someday. Story 66. No, I would not want to live once everyone I love has passed away. I also want to meet my creator after what I hope is a long, fulfilling life. I have always said I never want to die, but I cannot wait to meet God. Story 67. No, I do not have enough information to make a deal. At a minimum, I would need to know that I have the power or option to end it myself at any moment of my choosing. If that were the case, I would probably say yes. Story 68. Probably not without some way to always escape torture. But even then I would get bored and hate the eternal loneliness. Story 69. People dream about immortality, but I think the human brain has a pleasurable experience timeline of 80 years. Anything beyond that could become boring or even painful. We do not know what a person would feel like at 200 years old, even assuming a youthful body. How many times can the neurons in your brain fire repeatedly in an endless cycle? A 200-year-old might feel suicidal. We just do not know. It may be like hunger. You eat and receive pleasure. You keep eating. At some point, further eating feels uncomfortable. Story 70. Absolutely not. Unless my children can also live forever, I have no reason to. Story 71. Forever? No, but if it were like in The Lord of the Rings where elves live forever and there were others like them, I would. Story 72. No, imagine being buried alive while immortal, shoved in a barrel, and dropped to the bottom of the ocean. The anime Baccano answers that question easily. Story 73. I think we are all already living forever. Would I want to stay inside a human body forever? No, it is hard being on Earth. Can also be great, but I do not want to just keep doing this forever. Story 74. Yes, but I want to be able to end it myself at any time. I want to see what happens. I want to see how humanity evolves. I want to watch life go. I want to see stars born, age, and die. I want to see galaxies collapse. I want to see black holes evaporate. I want to see the last light of the last star fade. I want to see a new universe appear, then watch it grow, age, and die. I want to see it all. Story 75. If I say yes, I can always say no at a later time. But if I say no, there comes a point where I cannot change my mind. Story 76. Heck yes, I could learn and see so much of the world. I could meet many people and watch how the world changes from generation to generation. I hope that living forever means I cannot be killed if any crazy wars start. The hard part would be falling in love and watching loved ones come and go. Story 77. Christ no. At some point, I would end up floating in space forever. Who would want that? Story 78. Huge no. Unless I can choose to die. Many people have already explained why living forever would not be good. Story 79. I wouldn't hesitate for a second to say no. I am disabled and I do not want to deal with that forever. I already have to live with them until I die, so I would rather die and not live with that burden or be a burden forever. Story 80. Pretty deep question. Do I still age? Do I live forever? Or am I immortal? If I live forever, that means I would die in a horrific or terrifying way. If I am immortal, is there a way to turn it off so I do not have to witness the sun absorbing our planet or some other world-ending event? Story 81. No way. I have been praying for God to send a lightning bolt through my head so my brains fly out, and I am out of this reality. Story 82. Anyone who answers yes does not understand what forever means. Do you really want to be here 92 billion years from now? Story 83. Oh, hell no. No, I want off this ride. I enjoy my children and my pets, but the rest of death sounds amazing. I am not saying I want to die, at least not now, but living forever sounds terrible. Blech. Story 84. Imagine being immortal but still able to experience pain. The moment when hot oil falls on your face. When a crocodile bites you and takes your arm away. The moment when you get stung by a bullet ant inside your eye. The moment when the world descends into chaos in a nuclear war. The moment you suffocate eternally when, submerged in the ocean, The moment when the sun goes out and nothing remains on Earth. The moment when the entire universe collapses and you are left alone. In nothingness, floating as a lonely atom with consciousness. In a vast sea of darkness. No light for eternity. That is when you finally understand why immortality is bad. Story 85. I think the idea of true immortality is frightening yet complex. In fantasy, you usually see immortals living for 10 to 20,000 years, but rarely someone with billions of years. Many people would not mind living longer because that would mean they could experience more of life. I think I would rather live for 500 years in good health than for a billion years of pure maddening boredom. If I lived forever, I would need to find many things to do, as well as explore another fresh universe every few billion years. If I had eternal memory, then I could pass some knowledge to other civilizations, but if I had to stay in this universe only, I would rather die. After all stars died, I would live in a really cold, airless existence until all matter gathered again and created another universe, and I feel the Big Bang would hurt like hell. So, I guess I would rather have a good life than an eternal one. Story 86. Longer life? Yes. The thought of losing loved ones scares me, but if I am able-bodied, I think I could handle double the lifespan or more, something along those lines. Immortality? Absolutely not. The scariest thing in the world to me is the idea of eternity, and I am not even sure if I am more scared of life in an eternal afterlife or the idea of just not existing forever. The thought of being alive, even if I were able-bodied and at my peak fitness for the entire time, would end up with an eternal madness I cannot even fathom. Story 87. Absolutely. It's my mortality which is ruining my life. The constant pressure of having to do things before time runs out kills me inside. It's never ending. As horrible as some think immortality would be, I believe it could be something unspeakably amazing if done right. Story 88. I would take the opposite approach. If I were given the choice to stop living immediately, I would do it. Story 89. How long is forever? Will I be floating through space after the sun goes supernova? Will the heat death of the universe be an issue? Story 90. Potentially, but not in this human form. I do not want to live this life without my loved ones. Once they are gone, I will take some time alone, but then I am okay with going too. I would consider immortality through reincarnation so that my soul could live on. Story 91. I would say yes, if only because I always have to know how everything ends. Story 92. Yes, because I want to keep playing new games developed by From Software. Story 93. Oh hell no. Eternity would be terrible. In 150 million years, when you have thought every thought you can have millions of times and experienced everything there is to experience millions of times, you are still right at the beginning of your journey. What a nightmare. Story 94. I am 26 years old and I already cannot wait for everything to come to an end. Definitely not for me. Story 95. No. No matter the conditions, there is always an annoying clause. What am I even going to do with that hat that is worth shouldering that annoyance forever? Story 96. Of course, as long as I am able to be healthy in both body and mind. Story 97. I do not enjoy meeting new people or having to do it repeatedly. Story 98. No, I know for a fact I would eventually want my existence to end. I would, however, like more than I will likely get. Story 99. Absolutely not. Long before the heat death of the universe, you will be alone, and then you will have to spend an eternity in silent darkness. Living forever would be the worst punishment imaginable. Story 100. No, because I almost pressed the off last night. This life is full of manipulation, anger, hate, war, and tears. I will not turn myself off, but I look forward to the day of eternal rest. Story 101. On one hand, it would be cool to live that long, build wealth, and try to help people with it. On the other hand, you would not want to get close to people since eventually they will all die, and you will be alone. Story 102. Yes. When this question is asked, people often highlight the assumed negatives, but I assume it is just me living in my 30-year-old body, enjoying life forever. So yes. Story 103. Yes, I can terminate it at any time based on the concept I understand. Story 104. No, I do not like the idea of not growing old with my family and seeing generation after generation die while you are there as a 356-year-old but you look 25. Story 105. Forever? God no. Eventually, all life on this planet will end. Then the sun will run out of fuel and expand. Imagine being completely alone, having been swallowed up by the sun, burning in incomprehensible agony but unable to die. Then the sun will collapse, and you will be alone in a void for the rest of eternity. That does not sound like fun to me. Story 106. No, never. Life is literally draining, and the world is becoming darker. Story 107. No disease would be awful as well as watching family pass away. Story 108. Yes. I'm not very close to anybody, so I don't think this whole see everyone you ever love die someday immortal curse would really bother me. I would live in the moment with people and know to let them drift away naturally instead of holding on to them from birth until death. Story 109. If I were immortal and could not die, yes. The number of people I would drag off a building with me and survive would be remarkable. Story 110. I would like to experience a complete dystopia and observe the changing attitudes of humans over long periods of time. Story 111. Yes, I know what to expect from this life. Forget the unknown. Story 112. No. Everyone I know will eventually die. My friends and family are what make life worth living. Story 113. Absolutely not. I cannot stand the idea of living here forever. Story 114. Living forever with the option to die is the literal dream. Story 115. The children's novel Tuck Everlasting is about a young girl considering whether to drink the water of a magic spring that grants immortality as she interacts with the Tuck family who drank it. It highlights all the terrible parts of immortality, mainly the social isolation. Story 116. My theory is that eventually I would go insane and would not have to deal with living forever anymore. Story 117. Depends on whether I am the only immortal and whether I could choose to die. There are many situations I can imagine being stuck in a horrible situation with no escape. Story 118. This requires me to confront what I fear more, dying or seeing everyone I love die. I do not know which is worse. Story 119. Things in life are meaningful because they eventually end. The same is true for life itself. Story 120. What a great question. This hurts my brain to think about. Story 121. No, that honestly sounds like torture. But if I could be immortal with the power to end my life, hell yes. Story 122. No. Outlive everyone I care about? Outlive the earth? Outlive the stars? Eventually end up floating around a dead universe watching protons decay? No way. Story 123. Yes. I keep hoping that during our lifetime they develop some science to keep us alive, or at least longer. Like studying turtles or something, they live on average well over 100 years. Story 124. I do not wish to be immortal. I just wish the good times passed a little slower. Story 125. Everyone says no, but what if they really did get the question? I am afraid I would say yes and regret it forever. Story 126. Yes, absolutely. I believe that after 1,000,000 years, there would be advanced technology to keep me entertained for eternity. I might even be a god. Story 127. No, because it would be lonely. After all, my friends and family died, and I would eventually be alone due to the heat death of the universe. Story 128. Absolutely not. I would not care to try to adjust, and knowing my luck, I would become a laboratory rat at some point. Story 129. If my loved ones and I do not age, yes. But if we do, I will mostly be alone to roam the earth. Story 130. Yes, and I would follow the same model as that immortal person who kept changing his name. The White Files made an episode on it. Story 131. Hell no. Death is a natural part of the cycle of life. It gives our time here meaning. Choose wisely what you will do with it. Story 132. Hell no. Living forever would be horrible. Imagine having to watch your entire family and all your friends die, and even the universe die eventually. Story 133. Could I at least stay young, healthy, and perhaps be indestructible or immune to pain? Sometimes living is a suffering worse than death. Story 134. Only if I could go back to being 35 or 40 and live forever in that body rather than the one I have now. Story 135. No. I believe better things are to come after the body dies. Story 136. Could it ever be reversed? Would I still age, or would I be in my prime physically? If you asked me about 10 years ago, the answer would have been yes. I was in my early 30s and in the best shape of my life. Now that I am in my 40s, getting overweight, having trouble sleeping, and feeling sore and achy all the time, my answer might be different. Story 137. Yes, I have been dreaming of that since I was 5. Living forever with people you love and eventually exploring the universe and multiverse is the only dream I have. I am freezing myself with the Alcor Life Extension Foundation. It is a long shot, but it is the only option I have. Story 138. Only if unlimited teleportation is included, so there are no worries about being trapped and it is possible to leave the planet when it begins to die, preferably with the ability to locate other places with life. So, by itself, no. With some conditions and additional abilities, maybe. Story 139. Hello there. I would like to talk to you about my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Story 140. I would not. I am tired. I want to move on to the next thing, whatever that is. Story 141. Well, 100,000 years from now, when the rest of humanity has evolved, I will be looked at like we view Neanderthals. Story 142. Absolutely not. I work in emergency services. I have seen what that sort of thing can mean. Story 143. Yes, because while life does sometimes suck, dying is even worse. Story 144. Absolutely, I would say yes. You would get to watch the rise and fall of nations and see the planet's topography change. Maybe witness the fall of humanity and the rise of what comes next. Possibly get to visit other planets if we as a people do not destroy ourselves. The amount of incredible events you would get to see. Why would you say no? Story 145. Only until the end of the world. When Earth ends, I am done. Story 146. Sure thing. I will just incinerate myself by shooting myself into the sun once I have had enough. Story 147. Our current technology and its progression would make it impossible to live in anonymity for much longer. I don't think people are considering that part carefully, or anything else for that matter. You are no longer a nameless, faceless entity in today's society. What will that be like in 200 years? You could end up in a lab or a cage before you know it. Many people talk about getting rich or taking over the world. It seems you would need a certain amount of charisma or intelligence to make that happen. Being immortal does not guarantee you will have either of those qualities or be able to obtain them. You would probably end up working for all eternity. Also, the Earth has an expiration date, but you would not. What will you do when the sun engulfs the Earth? You better hope they invent faster-than-light travel so you can escape before the end. If they have not, what is the possibility of you figuring it out even with millions of years? What about evolution? It seems you would be quite static while humans continue evolving. You might be considered a Neanderthal in a few 100,000 years compared to humans of that time. I don't think most people are truly thinking this through. For me, it's a resounding no. Life is cruel, and I do not want to be an immortal stuck in some dystopian future or be bored for eternity because humanity destroyed itself after a century. Story 148. Yes. Of course, there are important details to sort out, such as what would happen to me if I were buried alive and nobody knew where I was. But generally, I want to live a longer life with a vigorous body. Story 149. Not in this body, no. I am in too much pain. I will welcome death with open arms. I am not suicidal, do not worry, but I will not lie that it will be a relief when the time comes. Story 150. I would say yes. I am sure there would be a way to die eventually. You cannot regenerate if nothing is left, right? Story 151. No, I assume I would also have to work forever to afford it, and no thank you. Story 152. Yes. For the same reason, I go to the hospital if I get a disease. Story 153. I would definitely avoid that. You would constantly watch your friends and family die. Additionally, since time seems to move faster as you age, you would feel like you were moving at the speed of light, while everyone else would be in slow motion. Story 154. Being immortal is the worst thing I can imagine. You have to deal with the same problems life deals you forever, and you constantly have to see people you love die. If it were just being able to stay alive as long as I want until I decide to die, then sure, but if I absolutely cannot die, hell no. Story 155. Pretty much already are, just depends on what you believe. Story 156. No. I would be so sick of everyone and the way of the world. I would just be so bored by it all. The older I get, the more I realize how ready I will be when it is time. Check out the alternate ending of death becomes her for insight into my thoughts. Story 157. Only if I have complete time control. Forward, backward, speed up, slow down, freeze. Also, if I could choose to die. Story 158. No. Live your life, do your best, then go. It is a combination of fear and hubris that would make a person say yes. Story 159. I will ask if eternal youth is also part of the equation. Additionally, I want to know if I have the option to die if I become tired of living for thousands of years. Story 160. The issue is that your chances of getting stuck are slim, but the longer you live, the more likely it becomes. Imagine 500 years from now you hike on a glacier and fall into a cavern. There is no way out, and nobody is coming for you. Or if you anger someone and they put you into cement shoes and sink you in the ocean. I get bored after 3 minutes on the toilet without something to read. It is hard to imagine being stuck somewhere for several thousand years. Story 161. No, I definitely want to go before my children. Now, if we all could be immortal, then absolutely yes. Story 162. If it lasts forever, then no. Surviving until the heat death of the universe and beyond is not a pleasant thought. Story 163. There is too much missing information to make this question answerable. Story 164. No and yes. Not in this life, but if God willing I go to paradise, then of course. I do not know why anyone would want to live forever in this world. Story 165. And end up like Paul in the Green Mile, constantly watching everyone I have ever loved die over and over again as the years roll by. Story 166. Your soul lives on forever. You have done this before. Do not worry. Story 167. No, because I am curious about what happens after we die. Yes, because there is so much more I want to learn and experience, and I think if I had enough time, I could make a big positive impact on the world. Story 168. No, it is not worth all of that forever nonsense. The only thing I want forever is vanilla ice cream. Story 169. I would take it without question, figure out the details later, and enthusiastically do all the things I love. Story 170. Yes. Because any concerns I have millions of years to find an answer to. Every thought I have will almost certainly outweigh your premise at some point. Story 171. I'll pass. Thanks. I've been under anesthesia a few times. It is great. Story 172. Yes, but with a caveat. Not as the middle-aged man I am now or older. I would say yes if I were in my 20s forever. Story 173. Yes, I would spend however long it took to make other people, spaceships, and items that last forever and are invincible. I believe that even events like the heat death of the universe have some type of end or rebirth. I am not a scientist, but I believe that before the Big Bang, something existed and that it came from something significant. Another Big Bang could occur after the death of our universe. Story 174. Can I trade it for someone else or others to live forever instead? Story 175. On a long enough timescale, you will get stuck in a hole somewhere with no way out. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but because it is possible if you live long enough, it will eventually happen. And do not get me started on the heat death of the universe. So yes, the answer is yes because I am stupid. Story 176. Yeah, I actually would. I know everyone says what they are supposed to say, but I have no shame in admitting I would accept immortality. I understand the implications of losing people I love and potentially losing touch with my humanity as I realize I have forever while average people have basically a blink of an eye. I get to witness how the universe ends and how far humanity gets to go. I also have to suffer through whatever comes after if humanity or the universe ends. I accept that. Story 177. No, I do want to live a long time, but being immortal sounds awful if no one else is immortal with you. Not to mention, you really have to be careful not to get stuck anywhere. Story 178. Yes. I want to see where humanity goes, how it evolves and changes. I know people say it would be hell, but I think it would be worth it. Story 179. Immortality almost seems scarier to me than death. All living things have an end, including me, and I am not exactly excited about that. However, I also really dislike the idea of outliving my wife and son. Story 180. If I do not age and can choose to end my life if I want, yes. I need to know what happens in the future. I hate never knowing what will be happening in 10,000 years. Are humans still here? Did we move to new planets? Do we just live on ships like in the movie Wall-E? Are we basically cyborgs now, just with human brains grown in labs? How can I just die and never get to know our whole story? Story 181. No. Everyone I know and love will die. Their children and grandchildren will die. It would be hard to love anyone knowing they will die before you. Your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren will all die before you. Also, it is likely that someone will eventually discover that you are immortal or that you never age. Things would become complicated quickly. Additionally, the fact that you live forever would remove any drive or motivation to accomplish things. The limitation of our time gives life meaning. What is the point of inventing cures for every type of cancer if you will never be affected and people will die of other causes anyway? Even if you wanted to invent the cures, why do it now when you can do it 100 years from now? Unlimited time allows unlimited procrastination. This sounds like a deeply depressing reality. This does not even include existential threats to existence, such as the sun burning out or the inevitable heat death of the universe. Story 182. Absolutely not. Consider all the pain one experiences in a limited lifespan accumulating eternally. Story 183. No. Why would I want to deal with this forever? Story 184. Imagine the paperwork. Try to get a new passport and explain to the semi-depressed 55-year-old female clerk that you are in fact 253 years of age. People would know your age. You would have to move constantly or face the pitchforks. However, you could be rich beyond imagination just from saving small amounts of money over time. $100 per month with 10% interest would get you $2.3 trillion in your account over 200 years. Most people are forced to retire at a certain age. Imagine being 250 years old and forced to retire at 67. What would you even fill your time with? Story 185. I do not think life is all it is made out to be to want to live forever. Story 186. There is an entire episode of Justice League that explains why this is a bad idea. Story 187. Definitely not. My life would eventually become insignificant in the grand scale of time, and once the Earth ends, I would not want to just float around in the vacuum of space until the universe collapses. That sounds very boring. Story 188. Only if all my questions and any clarifications about what kind of immortality I have are answered completely. For example, can I regenerate? If not, then any severe injury I sustain may become chronic and permanent, and I might live eternity with that pain. Do I still physically age? And if so, is only my mind immortal? Or is it the other way around? Will I still contract mental illnesses like Alzheimer's but be unable to do anything about it? Too many what-ifs and not enough concrete answers. Story 189. Still alive when the sun consumes the earth in a few billion years. Or if the only game you are stuck playing is Superman 64. Story 190. I am 48 years old and already feeling bored. I would say I have lived a very interesting, fortunate, and exciting life. I am curious to see how the future of humanity unfolds, but it is going to be a no from me. Story 191. My grandparents saved me from my parents, who were addicts, and 33 years later, They are still my best friends. They are still here. I know one day they will not be, and I am trying to prepare so I am not completely devastated because that day could come at any time. For now, I focus on living in the moment with them. I would definitely pass on immortality, no question. I would miss those close to me deeply, and I would be broken beyond repair if I knew there was no possibility of seeing Nana and Papa again. Story 192. Reminder: eternal life does not necessarily mean eternal youth. Story 193. Absolutely not. I do not want to sit around and watch everyone I love pass away without me. Furthermore, over a long enough timeline, the chances of getting trapped or pinned in a cave-in, building collapse, or something similar become high. That is not a good way to spend immortality. Story 194. I think the whole immortality trap is a young person's thing. Of course, you always want to be in your prime and top shape. Why wouldn't you? The thought of outliving everyone I love would be soul-crushing. Then things change in society. I'm not that old, but I can already see the world changing from what I am used to, and it's scary and difficult. But I know I don't have to live with it. Imagine doing that for the rest of your life. Story 195. I would likely say yes, because who wants to die unless they are suffering permanently? One lifetime just does not seem like enough to see, feel, and do all the things you want to do. However, I suspect a few hundred years would be enough for most people, and after that it could become more of a burden to keep living. Story 196. If you are Christian, you are believed to live forever. That sounds frightening. Story 197. I imagine death is a potential or eventual cure for boredom. If God has always existed, maybe God wished God was not always there, or could give itself amnesia and trick itself into thinking it is not eternal. Being eternal is a strange concept, and you would eventually get bored, right? I think being born eternal would be a potential issue. Imagine you are not a fan of Earth, and you exist there forever. Death may be the Creator's ultimate desire, as they may be bored out of their minds. Approximately 100 billion people have suffered and died on this planet, and I guess the charade still is not enough entertainment for their boredom. Last I checked, none of the 100 billion put themselves on planet Earth, unless you count Jesus potentially. I would say yes if the world or gods are lying to everyone, and the actual truth is something beautiful or funny. Story 198. No. Some government agencies will definitely catch you and conduct experiments on you indefinitely. Story 199. I wake up some days and want to die. That would be a bad decision. Story 200. Yes. Death is just black nothingness, which seems very boring. Story 201. I would never choose immortality for many reasons, but one reason I do not see mentioned often is that you would need to make new friends every 50 to 80 years. You would either have to become very good at handling grief or live your entire life being unable to relate to anyone. There are many social factors alone that make immortality a terrible idea. Story 202. I could help many people. I could be there, hidden throughout time to help and give advice. I would take the opportunity. Story 203. I want to learn continuously. The future will hold data that I have never processed, and I want it. Story 204. Yes, definitely, as long as I also have regenerative powers, become immune to all possible harm, do not physically age or become sick, and do not become a thrall. Story 205. No, why do people want to live forever? It would just be painful watching everyone and everything die. Story 206. Absolutely. If we rule out the fact you'd serve the destruction of the universe and just float around aimlessly, I would love to see live indefinitely into the future. We have gone from stick and mud homes to living in space in 1,000 years. Just imagine what another 1,000 will do. Story 207. As long as it comes with eternal youth, yes. If not, then there is no way. Story 208. I like the impermanence of life. It resonates with the universe. The universe began and will most likely end at some point. A universe in which a human can live forever is not only impossible but also unnatural. Story 209. 100% yes. I am incredibly fascinated by where time will take the universe and the human species. My only real sadness comes from knowing I will not get that opportunity. Story 210. We have a family pact. If any of us is turned into a vampire or werewolf, We are to turn the rest of the family as soon as possible. No discussions, no existential questions. Just bite me. We want to live forever, but only if we can do it as a family. And no, we don't care if we are ghouls or not. The type of immortal does not matter as long as we are together. Story 211. If I do not age or get sick from serious diseases such as cancer, then my answer would be yes. Story 212. It depends. If I get to stay young, fit, and healthy, I would like to have a chance to live forever. If my health deteriorates and I cannot enjoy life, no thanks. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.